Okay, there was no sound. Okay, there was no sound. So I hope my screen is visible to you. And so last week we were looking at the CSS, modifying the DOM structure, the DOM tree. So the DOM stands for Document Object Model. So which means that when we are dealing with HTML is similar to XML, meaning that there are tags. Okay, so which means that you can actually find a particular element for your you can find a particular element of your HTML page within a particular tag. Okay, so which means that if I look at the head tag alone, right, then I will, inside the head tag I will have title, meta, and another meta tag. And if I look at the body tag, then the body tag will contain multiple tags like this, which are nested in such a fashion, right? Which means that body contains h1, p, ul, and in the ul you will have 3 li's, and in the p you have another a, which is for a link, right? And if you look at HTML, it is the root, and which means that it contains the entire DOM in your HTML. Okay, now the document object model, you need to understand it in terms of similar to what we say as object oriented programming, or you should think of it as you are going to modify or play around with the object. Okay, so which means that you are extracting an object with this particular query, and then you are modifying that object, you are doing something on that object, and which makes changes to the HTML that you are seeing. And the HTML is what you will see on your screen. So we had earlier mentioned that it is not a good idea to do some HTML inside your particular function code. Say for example, over here, right, you have a function called function side click, and it has it gets an element by ID, and the element is main. So you get the element by ID of that document, and then you access its inner HTML, and then if you add a HTML tag like this, then it is not a really good idea. Okay, because this is ugly and error prone and can be very difficult as you keep on maintaining the code. So first thing, I mean, when you look into computer programming, or even we had learned software engineering as well, right? So what we need to understand over there is something called maintainability, which means that when you write a software, you have to write it in such a way that it has to be maintainable in the future. Otherwise, this particular software, if it is very difficult to modify for your use cases, then, and if it is not maintainable, then it becomes obsolete after some time, because you won't find people probably to work on that project, and that project may not be able to survive beyond a certain period of time due to the buggy nature in which it was initially coded. Okay, so definitely it's a bad style on many levels. Okay, that is, the JavaScript code is embedded within the HTML in this particular case. Okay, and if you look at this particular example also, you can see that there is a lot more things, right, that we have added here in the inner HTML, and this is definitely not a very good way to program. Of course, it is actually a clever way, but it is not a good way. If you want to do something quickly, very quickly, and that too just for maybe prototyping, okay, it could be helpful, but not for a proper functioning website. Okay, so instead of actually hacking through the inner HTML, you can actually use through the DOM. Okay, so which means that you can actually create an element with a tag. Okay, so document.create element with a tag, so creates and returns a new empty DOM node representing an element of that type. And you can also create a text node. Okay, so this will return a text node containing the given text. So you give the text as a parameter to this particular thing. So you can see that you have the object document, and you are calling a method on that object document. So you call document.create text node, and you give the text that you want to give it. Okay, and if you want to create an element, you do as document dot create element. That's a method. Okay, so you have the document object and you have the create element method with the tag as the parameter. So if you want to create a new h2 node in JavaScript, right, this is how we can go ahead and create it. Var new heading document dot create element h2 new heading dot inner HTML, and you have, this is a heading. Okay, new heading dot style dot color green. So instead of actually writing it as p style color or h2 style color green, right, and then the text like this in document dot get element by id main inner HTML plus, right, that's like an inner HTML hacking. So instead of doing that, you can actually do it using your DOM structure, and this is how you can actually create it. So this merely creating an element does not add it to the page. You must add the new element as a child of an existing element on the page. Okay, so when you look at the DOM tree structure, you can understand that the main node or the root node is the HTML, and which means that if I want to add a new element, I need to place it at some place, right? And for placing it, I need to add it to an existing node. Okay, I cannot just have a node newly created and it's not connected at all, right? It means that it is not getting rendered or it's not even placed in the HTML. Okay, so you can actually do it using append child, insert before, remove child, and replace child. Okay, so append child and you can pass the node, places a given node at the end of this node's child list. Okay, so if you pass a particular node, then it will actually put it at the end of the child list. So if you look at an example in the third line of the JavaScript that is given over here, you can see that you have document dot get element by id main append child p. Okay, so here p is a new node that we have created and which we want to append to the element which is identified by the id main. Okay, so the element identified by the id main is there in the document. Okay, so you get that object, and on that object you append a child called p, right? I think you are well aware of the object oriented programming concepts over here, right? So you have then insert before, remove child, replace child. So insert before is you pass a new node and an old node, so places the given new node in this node's child list just before the old child. And you can remove a particular node by using remove child, and you can remove a particular or replace a child by with a new node. Okay, so in this particular JavaScript example where we had used append child, let's take a look at the whole example. So first thing, we create an element called p, okay, with the tag p. So that is very important. This is the tag that you are passing, the p over here in the document dot create element. The parameter to the create element method is the tag p, and we create an object called or a variable called p here. Okay, and this is a variable p, and we know that it is loosely typed, so which means that p is actually an object. Okay, and you access the inner HTML of that p and you put this text a paragraph. Okay, and then you add it to the main as a child. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. So you can have complex document object manipulations as well. Okay, say it can be like, say when the go button is clicked, reposition all the divs of class puzzle to random xy locations. Like for example, let's think about the game 2048. I guess you must have played that, right? Or even the game Sudoku. So if I want you to create, or if you have created a Sudoku board of 9 by 9 entries, right? Or the 2048 game, I hope you are aware of that game, right? Say for example, the game that I'm mentioning is 2048 game. See this game, okay, where you have it's a single player sliding tile puzzle video game, okay. So and if what if I ask you to create a small game which can say play Tetris, right, or Sudoku, or like a board game, right? So which means that you can actually use your JavaScript code to modify the existing elements in the page, and you can actually do it for something similar to what I showed you in this game example as well, correct? So when you click the go button, you want to reposition all the diffs of the class puzzle to random XY locations. Now when the user hovers over the maze boundary, turn all maze walls red, right, say for example. So which means that now you can actually use JavaScript for creating some simple games, as well as if you are good at what visualizing it and then programming it the way you want, you will be able to create somewhat complex things as well. But definitely it could slow down your browser. It could it may not be the most optimal way, okay, but I'm saying that when we have online resources, say you have online C compiler, you have online PHP compilers, then you have multiple things, like you can actually have text to speech engine which are available online, okay, which means that you just need to visit that website. You need to just enter or copy paste the text that you want to be listening to, which you do not want to read, okay. So you just copy paste the entire text and you paste it on a website like I think naturalreaders.com/online. That's some website which I have come across some time back. So it essentially means that you are actually able to have a lot of functionalities added to your website with JavaScript, okay. It becomes more interactive. So change every other item in the UL list with IDs of TAs to have a gray background, okay. So that is another thing that you can do. That's probably the smallest, easiest thing, right? So we can do all these complex DOM manipulations as well, okay. So you can actually do it by get elements by tag name, get elements by name, query selector all, okay. Say you can actually return so the get elements by tag name returns array of descendants with the given tag such as div, okay. So you should understand that it has get elements, right? So earlier when we were looking at the main get element by ID, which means that we were getting one element, correct? So in this previous examples as well, over here it was document.get element by ID, which is just one single element that you were getting. Now we know that we can have the ID used in a particular HTML file only once, and for that reason, if you give get element by ID and that element exists in the HTML page with that ID, then that will be selected, which means that without any confusion it can be selected. And over here the get elements by tag name. So here instead of the ID, we are going to select a particular element by a tag name, and we know that in HTML the tags p, a, div, okay, h1, h2, those things can be repeated a number of times, which means that a single HTML file can have these tags multiple times. And so get elements by tag name will have to return you a list of objects. It's not just one object that it can actually return you, because it will have or it might have multiple tags in the same HTML file. So multiple div tags could be there in the HTML file. So returns an array or a list of descendants with the given tag such as div. And then you have get elements by name, return array of descendants with the given name attribute, okay. So and then you have query selector returns the first element that would be matched by the given CSS selector string. Okay, and then you have query selector all, which will return an array of all elements that would be matched by the given CSS selector string. So the difference between query selector and query selector all is that query selector will return the query selector all's 0th element, okay, or the first element that is there in the array that is returned by query selector all is the one that is selected by or returned by query selector. So you can have something like this, like for example getting all elements of a certain type. Okay, so you can have variable all parameters, okay, or I'm sorry, all paras. Okay, highlight all the paragraphs in the text. So you have a variable called all paras, which is obtained by which is actually an array, okay, because we run document.query selector all for the tag p, which means that it is actually an array that it will return, and you can actually set the color to yellow by running a for loop, and a for loop will be something like for var I equal to 0, I less than all paras dot length. Okay, so whatever is the length of all paras, so we know that the index starts from 0 just like in C and C++. Okay, and for that reason we have var I equal to 0 and I less than all paras dot length and then I plus plus, and then you access the objects that are in the array one by one. So all paras of I dot style dot background color is equal to yellow. This is how we can actually set a particular style for the all the selected paragraphs. Okay, and you can see that if you have an HTML like this, then it will select all the p tags, okay, and return it in an array of objects containing the which are selected by the query selector all. Okay, you can have complex selectors. Okay, say for example you have an ID called address, okay, and you will select all the p in that ID which has the ID address. Okay, so for example in this HTML we have a p tag where the text is this won't be returned, which essentially means that that p tag in our example of JavaScript that is given on the top will not be returned. And then we have a div ID which has two other p tags, and the div has an ID called address. So the ID is address and not a class. Okay, so now you have a div ID as address and which contains two other p tags. So in this particular JavaScript code we have var address paragraphs, okay, document dot query selector all, in the parameter, in the parameter to the query selector all we pass the ID and the tag, okay, separated by a space. Okay, so we pass the ID hash address space p is the tag in double quotes or in string. Okay, and then we access the elements, each of the objects, and then set the color to be background color to be yellow. Okay, so you can see that now you can probably imagine that when you are going to process a form, before the form is submitted to the actual server, okay, you can actually validate the form using JavaScript at the client side. Okay, you know that JavaScript is a client side scripting programming language, so which means that based on whatever we have discussed so far, you must be in a position to visualize a form with tick marks, with email addresses, with names, and some information that you need to enter, and some of the fields are mandatory. Okay, and you know that the phone number will have a particular pattern, and the number of numbers will be these many. Or let us say you have to enter the credit card or the debit card details. Like for instance, if you have used your debit card or credit card on for any online transactions, okay, if you have yourself used it, okay, you will see that when you go to that particular website and when you try to enter the first 4 or the first 6 digits of the debit card itself without having to enter the entire number of digits, even while you are entering the digits, it will even after entering 4 or 5 digits, it will be able to show you on the right side what card it is, whether it is a MasterCard or a Visa card or a RuPay card, whatever card it is, right? So which means that how is that done? It is actually done by selecting the information that you enter in the form and then running a particular query or selecting from the DB based on the pattern. It could be done completely using JavaScript at the client side, or it could have Ajax as well. So Ajax is again somewhat similar to JavaScript, but it will help you to do some asynchronous communication as well. Now, okay, so this example is easy, right? So we have P selector, then address P, then you have, if you want to select for a class, okay, so if you don't write dot or hash, right, and you won't be able to differentiate between the class or an ID. So earlier we have seen that it is hash address, which is actually for an ID. And if you want to select for a class, then say you want to select all the tags which uses the class dot control, then you will use the code like this: document dot query selector all, in double quotes you will write dot control, okay, and that is the you are going to store it in a variable called game buttons, okay. So query selector query selector all returns an array, and it is not a single element, that we have already seen, right? If you are looking for query selector, then it will return the first element of the query selector all, as as I mentioned to you just 2 minutes back. So query selector all returns an array, not a single element, and must loop over the results using the for loop or whatever, okay. So document query selector returns just the first element that matches, if that's what you want, okay. So if you do not want to look at all the elements, or if you do not want to apply the changes to all the elements, or you don't want to access all of it, then you can use once you can get the first element only, and that you can use by query selector, okay. So this is apparently not correct, right? Is this correct from what we have discussed? Because it is not going to give you a single element, right? I mean, it's not going to give you an array, it's going to give you a single element, correct? Right, it is actually returning a single element, and for that reason this slide over here, right, on the bottom, you can see that it will actually give you an error. It's not a proper set of statements, okay, because this is going to return you an array. I mean, this should have returned an array similar to query selector all, but since you have used query selector, it's going to return you one single element, and when you have only one single element, you can't use this kind of an indexing over there, right? So you don't have game buttons on length or anything for that reason. And so in this example, right, we have query selector. So if we use query selector all, then it is going to give us the complete say the complete list of p's. Okay, so we can write it as for var I equal to 0, ps dot length I less than ps dot length, then ps plus plus, I'm sorry, then it will be ps of I.
Sir, it's I plus plus.
Oh, I'm sorry, I plus plus. Yeah, so this way you can actually select multiple elements, correct? So that's the and if I use query selector instead of query selector all, right, then it is going to not work. Why? Because this cannot execute. Okay, so I hope that is pretty simple, and you can actually try out whatever you want with the W3 schools itself if you want, or if you or better way is to use an external JavaScript file. Okay, now there's a question here: can I select a group of elements using query selector all even if my CSS file doesn't have any style rule for that same group? Okay, so this is a question, right? And we know that this is not about the CSS file, correct? Because the query selector all, although it works similar to how the selectors work in the CSS file, the query selector all works on the DOM of the HTML. Okay, and you can actually remove a child by this particular example. I mean, for removing a child, this is how you would do it. So for example, you have a variable bullet is equal to document dot get element id, element by id, remove me, and so that's called a bullet. So which means it could be a bullet point. Okay, so bullet dot parent node, so you access the parent of bullet by bullet dot parent node dot remove child bullet. Okay, so parent node could have multiple childs, and you want to specify that you want to remove the child identified by this object bullet, and this object in turn refers to the element that has the id remove me. Okay, and we know that the id is just there in one place in a single HTML file. So this is something could this work, because you are actually calling object dot parent node dot remove object. Yeah, it does. Okay, so now you have this keyword, so which means that all JavaScript code actually runs inside of an object, and by default code runs in the global window object. Okay, so you can see that this is like this pointer in your C++, okay, where you have an object called this to access a particular element that is, or a particular what do you call it, is as a namespace or a workspace. Okay, it would be a namespace. Okay, so you can access this window by using the this pointer. Okay, so this keyword, so all global variables and functions you declare become part of the window, and this keyword refers to the current object. Okay, so you can use this dot field name to access any field. This dot field name is equal to value to assign it some value. Okay, we are not we over here we are assigning some value to the field name, and then you can have this you have the object this, so this dot method name and the parameters to that to call a particular method that is available on this. So it could be like this dot inner HTML, right, or this dot get element by id, or this dot query selector all. Okay, so you can have So you have a function called booyah, booyah, okay, and in that function you have this dot value is equal to booyah, which means that whatever function calls this booyah, right, passes the, or the function booyah will have reference to that object which called booyah. Now when you have JavaScript like window.onload and you have a function, an anonymous function that is assigned to it, you have something like a document dot get element by id text box on mouse out booyah, okay, and document dot get element by id submit on click booyah, okay. So you can actually you know, attach these functions or the event handler to a particular event, okay, and inside the handler, so here the handler is booyah, right, or the function is booyah. So inside the handler, that element which calls it, so it could be the submit element by id, right, so that element on click will call the booyah, which means that you are going to access that particular element by the keyword this in the function, okay. So that is what the use of this keyword, and then you will access the value of value, and so this dot field name and the value is assigned to it, okay. So you can actually change the style. We have seen how we will change the style, etc., right. For example, the color is changed to red, or you want to change the font size to a different size, you can do that, okay. So the problem with the particular this particular CSS styling thing is that you will be able to set a particular style using the JavaScript, but if you know you are working with a HTML file in which the HTML file has an external CSS file, okay, then because you know we have not set it with dot style in the HTML, in the DOM itself, and it is in the CSS file, we will not be able to get the existing styles using the object, okay. Say for example, we have the HTML with the that is a button with the id click me, okay, with the text click me, okay, and on window load you have a function called a function, an anonymous function is assigned to on window load, which will get the document and get the element by id click me from the document, and you will associate on click event with the event handler bigger font, okay. So the event handler, the function bigger font is defined at the bottom. That function bigger font gets the element by id click me, so it will get the element click me by the id, okay, or the button element by the id click me is fetched by the line var button is equal to document dot get element by id click me, and var size is equal to parse int button dot style dot font size. So and then you can do button dot style dot font size is equal to size plus 4 plus pt, okay. But then this one, right, will not be able to get you the font size, because you cannot do button dot style dot font size and parse it as an integer and then store it into size, because if that is available only in the CSS, right, and in that case how will you do it? You will have to access the element's existing style, okay, and for that you can use window dot get computed style and the element dot property name. Okay, so it's like this. So for example, the earlier thing gets slightly changed. So you have a variable dot click me, document dot get element by id click me, so you get the click me by id, and variable size is equal to, so you are now going to get the size, because earlier when you were trying to run it, right, you were unable to get the size because you cannot do it unless you know the style is available in the DOM itself. If you had mentioned the style in the HTML itself, you would have been able to get it, but since it is available in the CSS, you would not be able to get it. Now because it is available in the CSS and you want to get it even though it is in the CSS, there is another way to do it, and this is because you know, we know that an HTML document is just a simple plain HTML text file, right? It's a simple plain text document. I wouldn't say it's a text file, it's a text document with tags, etc., and it gets rendered on our computer screen, correct? So when I say rendered, it means that it could mean that you know, my screen that I'm looking the particular HTML file is probably my phone screen or my laptop screen, and when I say that it gets rendered on the phone screen or on the laptop screen, it has to do some computations related to the width and the height, the resolution of the screen that it is going to get rendered on, and based on the rules that are mentioned regarding how it should be rendered, it will get rendered. Okay, so you can use something called get computed style because it is rendered or the window is rendered. Okay, so parse int window dot get computed style click me, so you pass the object click me, okay, for the window, for the method get computed style, so you pass that, and then you select the font size from that, then you parse it as an integer, and then you will have the font size in the variable size, and then you can do click me dot style dot font size is equal to size plus 4 plus pt, which will set the font size to 4 points addition in you know, increase the font size by 4 points than the existing font size. Over here, right, in the previous slide, that is problem with reading and changing the styles. So the problem here is with reading the style, and if you had used button dot style dot font size is equal to 4 pt instead of size plus 4 plus pt, if you had omitted size, then it would have worked, but the size is something that we wanted to get, which is the existing size of the font in the page. Okay, so you can also, you know, have, there could be common bugs, that is incorrect usage of the existing styles. So there is an example that is given here which is mentioned as 200 px plus 100 plus px, and which is actually a pretty slightly tricky evaluation, but this gets evaluated into a string due to the JavaScript properties, and which means that 200 px 100 px will be the evaluated result. So if you have, let's say, something like a main which is obtained from the document by the get element by id main, and you want to apply a particular style to the particular main, if you try to do it as main dot style dot top is equal to window dot get computed style main dot top, okay, plus px, it would become you know, it may not be evaluated properly because you have not parsed the output of get computed style main dot top, which is actually the same thing, right, using the parse integer. So you parse it then do plus 100, and then you add px, and which means that you will finally be able to specify the the uh, the pixel changes. You will be able to change the style slightly. Okay, and getting and setting the css classes. Just a second, guys. Just a second, I'm getting a call. Hello? Yes, sir? Hello? Sorry, students, so that was an important call. Okay, now am I audible, students?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and this my I mean, can someone check whether the YouTube link is also working fine? I'll just check whether the audio is. It's my I mean, can someone check whether the, yes, it was working. Sure. So now going back, yeah. So getting and setting the CSS classes. Okay, so here we have a function called highlight field. I hope you know what the first line does, and then you have if not text dot class name. Okay, then you set a class name, else if text dot class name dot index of invalid is less than 0, then you do plus highlight. Okay, text dot class name plus is equal to highlight. Okay, so here in this JavaScript, the DOM's class name property corresponds to HTML class attribute. Okay, and somewhat clunky when dealing with multiple space separated classes as one big string. Okay, so here the idea is that you have just tried to get the class name of a particular element by ID, which has the ID text. Okay, and you are checking whether if it has any class name, and if it doesn't have any class name, then you do a, if it has a class name, you do go to the else part. If you do not have a class name, then you go to the if part. Okay, and then do the particular thing. So here, right, you have added the class name by a simple string manipulation, right? So text dot class name plus is equal to highlight. Okay, while it would be better to do with class list. Okay, so you will do if not text dot class list dot contains invalid, then class list text.classlist.add highlight. So you are adding a particular name. Okay, so class list collection has methods that are for adding, removing, and contains toggle to manipulate the CSS classes. You can have the you have the particular methods called add, remove, contains, and toggle. Okay, and this is similar to the existing class name DOM property, but don't have to manually split by spaces. Okay, so that will give you the class list of a particular text, oh I'm sorry, of a particular tag that is selected. So types of DOM nodes, you have element nodes, which are the HTML tag, can have children and or attributes. Then you have text nodes, text in a block element. Okay, and attribute nodes, which are attribute value pair, which are text or attributes are children in an element node, cannot have children or attributes. And so you have element nodes, text nodes, and attribute nodes. Okay, so HTML tag is the element nodes, then you have the text in a block element, which are the text nodes, and then you have the attribute. Okay, so the attribute nodes, right, cannot have children or further attributes, and the attribute nodes are usually not shown when the when we draw the DOM tree. Okay, you can also, you know, traverse the DOM tree manually. Like for instance, every node's DOM object has the following properties, right? For example, it has first child, last child. Okay, start and end of this nodes list of children, child nodes, that will be an array of all the nodes of this. Okay, which means that if I am referring to a particular object by this, that things, children nodes is what defined as child nodes. So this keyword is what this means. Okay, then you have next sibling, previous sibling, that is the neighboring nodes with the same parent. Then you have the parent node, so the element that contains this node. Okay, so here you have a complete list of appealing address, DOM node properties. So just take a look at that. Okay, I think that's not available, so you can just search for DOM node properties, DOM node properties JavaScript W3 schools. Okay, so you will be able to get a better idea from this particular example. Okay, so you know, because that link in the PDF file was not working, I just searched for the same on Google, and I got the answer. Okay, so you could try that as well. Now going back. Okay, then for the DOM tree traversal, right, this would be you know, you can visualize it somewhat like this. You have a paragraph, and then you have a link. Okay, so the paragraph is identified by the ID foo, then you have a link within the paragraph. Okay, so you have a paragraph node, then you inside that you have a child node A, correct, and then you can have the first child and the last child to the link. Okay, then you have, this is the kind of relation that we can see from the type of nodes that we have seen so far, right, and the and how we can actually traverse the node. So you know, based on this visualization, you will be able to get an idea. Like if you are looking at this particular text node, right, this paragraph, then its parent node is P. Okay, and its sibling is the A, and you have the link which is actually the text for the particular A, correct? And A can have another dot as another sibling. Say for example, in the paragraph P with the ID foo, you have three things mainly, okay, which is the three things. The paragraph, this is a paragraph of text with A, that's the first thing. Then you have the um, the A tag, correct, which has another child called link. And first was the paragraph. This is a paragraph of text with A, and then the A tag itself, and then after the A tag and before the P tag closes, you have a dot. So that is also another sibling, which means that these are all the three different siblings, and you will be able to go through do the traversal programmatically by understanding this particular visualization. Then you have, yes,
Sir, we have break now.
you have, okay, you want to have a break, okay. It's break time, all right. Okay guys, so I think let's meet in the next class. That's tomorrow, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's it. And let's just take a look at this is the last slide on element versus text nodes. Okay, so here, right, in this particular HTML you have how many children does the div above have? There are 3. And how many children does the paragraph have? The A tag, right? So I mean, there can be different questions like this, and we will try to go forward and complete with the JavaScript part and get started with the PHP as soon as possible. Okay, you should understand that, and you should be in a very open mind with the idea that all of these things, right, are going to be somewhat similar. All the programming that you do, right, will be similar. You have variables, you have some print statements, you have several things, but over here the only difference would be that it will be working in different layers, and we are learning or using multiple different programming languages when it comes to web technology. Okay, but it could have its similarities with respect to your C programming language, C++ programming language, or even your Python programming language and other kind of languages. Okay, so that's it guys, so let's meet tomorrow in the next class. Bye. Shall I stop the presentation? Do you have any doubts? Nothing. Okay, I'll stop.